Around 71% of carbon emissions contributing to climate change come from large corporations. How can individuals push these corporations responsible for the majority of emissions to improve their practices? And how not to fall for the greenwashing trend that is growing out there? For those not familiar with the term, greenwashing means making false claims that the company or product or specific action is environmentally friendly for marketing purposes. Hi there, it's Marigona and welcome to my channel. Here I offer ideas on reducing our carbon footprint with our everyday choices by explaining the consequences or by offering options that are less damaging to the environment. If you evaluate which individual choices will have the most impact, one important thing you can do is to carefully consider what you eat. For example, one average family of 4 emits more carbon dioxide by regular food consumption than by driving 2 cars. The food industry is a major player in environmental issues such as deforestation, land usage, water wastage, and excess fertilizer use. And that's to say nothing about the greenhouse gas emissions associated with agriculture, shipping, and food processing and storage. A lot of the dietary claims promoted by the media should be ignored. On one side, we have the Paleolithic diets, where more than a third of all food energy is taken from meat protein, like a caricature of some distant evolutionary roots. And the other side that forces the act of never ever swallowing a microgram of animal matter because of claims that plants, unlike domesticated animals, don't put too much pressure on the environment. But which is the best way to highlight a healthy diet, unless we associate it with longevity? The full expression of human growth potential can take place only when diets in childhood and adolescence contain sufficient quantities of animal protein, first in milk and then later in other dairy products like eggs and meat. Eating meat is a significant component of our heritage because our large brains evolved partly because of eating meat. One unmistakable testimony of this has been the rise in body heights in Japan, South Korea, and China after 1950s as a result of increased intake of animal products. The traditional diet there was insufficient to support the population's growth potential, and it resulted in short statures among both women and men. Then the consumption of milk was introduced to school lunches to prevent malnutrition, and white rice became abundant. The country built the world's largest fishing fleet, and meat became a part of common Japanese dishes. While veganism is a waste of valuable biomass because only ruminants, that is cattle, sheep or goats, can digest plant-based foods and acquire their nutrients, high-level carnivory has not proven nutritional benefits either. It certainly does not add any years to life expectancy, and it is a source of additional environmental stress. Meat consumption in Japan, the country with the world's highest longevity, has recently been below 30 kilos per year per person. Similarly, in France, a traditionally high meat intake country, there have been reports of no more than 39 kilos of meat per year per adult, which equals somewhere around 100 grams per day. The Spanish people are the second highest longevity country. Traditionally, they followed the so-called Mediterranean diet, which includes high intakes of vegetables, fruits, and whole grains, completed of beans, nuts, seeds, and olive oil. By 2000, Spain became Europe's leading carnivorous nation, and on 2020 reports, Spanish people seem to consume on average till 110 kilos of meat per person per year. This is twice the Japanese mean. In many high-income countries, the individual eats around 100 kilos of meat per year, but the best nutritional advice says that in order to maintain an adequate amount of high-quality protein, we should not eat more than one adult's mass equivalent of meat per year. But many countries have been rising meat consumption rapidly, countries as Brazil, Indonesia, and China. And many people in Asia and Africa would benefit from a richer meat protein diet. By moderating meat consumption and favoring meat that can be grown with lower environmental impact, we also reduce crop harvests because most of the grain harvests are not destined directly for food, but for animal feed. The same problem arises with dairy as a ruminant meat production, so there is little point in switching from beef to cheese. A kilo of cheese produces around 13 kilos of CO2 equivalent emissions, compared with around 17 kilos of emissions for beef. The second thing that we can do to reduce the environmental stress individually is if we waste less food. The well-documented global food losses have been very high, a constant high for the past 40 years, mostly because of a difference in purchase and our actual needs. According to research, the world loses almost half of the root crops, fruits and vegetables, a third of all fish, 30% of cereals, and a fifth of all oilseeds, meats, and dairy products, or at least one-third of the overall food supply. The daily requirement of an adult calorie intake should be around 2000 till 2100 kilocalories, but the actual supplies are over 4000 kilocalories. The UK's Waste and Resource Action Programme asserts that 70% of wasted food was perfectly edible and was not consumed either because it spoiled or too much of it was served. In order to reduce our waste, we must buy only what we need. From what we see from research, even less than that. There is a huge number of apps available to make our life easier, full of essential grocery list ideas, weekly meal plans, very easy to use, which save us time and effort. And there is also the new trend of cooking that I found very interesting. It's the SuperCooking, I would call it, which generates a recipe based on the ingredients that you propose. You can try different recipes from all over the world and waste nothing from what is left from your recent purchases. I'm gonna let below a few of my favorite recipe generators, and don't hesitate to propose more on your comments. I lived in countries with an increased awareness and laws of protecting the environment, and in countries where people were poorly informed of their lifestyle impact on the planet. And the mutual point of all individual contribution, and the first one I would say, is to observe our food consumption and waste. These environmental changes that are happening, among them will affect our existential necessities, among them also food. I have a special video on this matter on how oxygen, water and food are about to be impacted with the process of climate change, and I will link it below and invite you to have a look. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to stay updated on my next videos.